Apple might be getting sued by OpenAI over the Apple Intelligence flop. We have a lot of fresh iOS 27 and macOS 27 leaks. Apple just patched a loophole that used to save you money on Apple products. Why iOS 26.5 is a bigger update than you think, and more, all in today's episode of Apple Weekly. Okay, so let's start by talking about the potential lawsuit that OpenAI might bring on Apple for Apple Intelligence essentially being a flop for ChatGPT. So this report comes from Bloomberg's Mark Gurman, and he said this: Apple's 2-year-old partnership with OpenAI has become strained, with the AI startup failing to see the expected benefits from the deal and now preparing possible legal action. OpenAI lawyers are actively working with an outside legal firm on a range of options that could be formally executed in the near future. And he goes on to say that OpenAI believed that the company's partnership, which wove ChatGPT into Apple software, would coax more users into subscribing to the chatbot. It also expected deeper integration across more Apple apps and prime placements within the Siri assistant. Instead, Apple's use of OpenAI technology across its operating systems remains limited, and features can be hard to find. OpenAI initially believed that the deal could generate billions of dollars per year in subscriptions, something that hasn't come close to happening, and now believes the Apple implementation has hurt OpenAI's brand with customers. So basically, OpenAI thought that putting ChatGPT into Apple software with Apple Intelligence was going to lead to a boost in subscriptions, which sounds logical, but as we all know, Apple Intelligence has been quite the flop as of now, so that is why OpenAI is so upset at this. And there's also another side of this where Apple also just doesn't like OpenAI, it seems like, at this point. So Gurman said this on X: for its part, Apple has been furious for over a year about OpenAI's aggressive recruiting of its hardware engineers that was acquired from Johnny Ive. Apple has also been wary of OpenAI's privacy practices. So it seems like this partnership is just really doomed because OpenAI doesn't like Apple and Apple doesn't like OpenAI for completely separate reasons. Like, OpenAI is upset because obviously ChatGPT going into all these Apple devices really proved to be kind of a flop for what they were expecting, which is billions of subscriptions. And really nobody that I know bought a subscription to ChatGPT because they used it on an Apple device through Apple Intelligence. And then Apple's mad because they're taking all their hardware people and building, these AI hardware devices now. So we'll see what comes from this, but it does seem like OpenAI might actually be preparing a lawsuit against Apple for this, but we'll have to see, to be continued. Now, with all that being said, Apple Intelligence is about to get a massive upgrade with iOS 27, and we have brand new details, a lot of details on iOS 27, thanks to Bloomberg's Mark Gurman. And this comes from a separate report from Gurman where he detailed a lot of new features coming in the camera app, system apps, with Siri, and a lot more. So he starts off by talking about the camera app in iOS 27, and he says users will be able to choose which features appear in the camera app and where they're placed. It's basically going to be like widgets. That includes controls for flash, exposure, the timer, and resolution. In addition to offering a more personalized experience, the changes should appeal to professional users. And he elaborates on these camera features. So he says that the controls toggle has been moved from the top right of the camera to the right side of the shutter button. And there's also a new Siri mode alongside photo, video, and other options, which is basically going to take you to visual intelligence. He then also says that each capture mode has its own set of widgets, which can be picked from a transparent add widgets tray that slides up from the bottom. So it seems like the camera app is going to be a lot more customizable now. It's going to be kind of like a control center, but inside the camera app, which can actually be pretty neat. He then gave us some details on the upcoming Siri changes. So aside from Siri being a standalone application and a chatbot, which we kind of already knew, we've talked about that before, he's saying that Siri will for sure now be in the dynamic island interface. So instead of having the whole glow around the screen like we've seen before, it looks like it's just going to be a small little blip up in the dynamic island moving forward. He says users can also activate a new system search by swiping down from the top center of the screen anywhere. When a user does that, a search or ask bar and the dynamic island will appear. And when you engage with Siri, you can swipe a transparent results card down to enter into a chatbot conversation mode, which looks similar to a text message thread. This interface has inline mini app cards to see results for things like weather, upcoming appointments, and notes. The search or ask interface looks similar to Spotlight Search on an iPhone today, but it can show more advanced features and additional data from within applications. He then says AI-powered search from the open web is also coming, which allows general knowledge questions to get detailed answers for the first time. That includes supplying bullet points of information from the web and large images. There's also a change coming to Safari, so he says that the web browser is gaining a new start page with 4 tabs across the top to more easily move between favorites, bookmarks, a reading list of saved articles, and browsing history. The weather app is getting a slight design change, including a new conditions panel on the main page for a particular city that allows a user to tab between data points beyond temperature, including information on rain and wind. And he says this currently requires jumping into another page in the app. Image Playground has also been completely redesigned for iOS 27. And then we also have some system changes. So he says that Apple is tweaking the tab bar across the bottom of several apps to combine search with the rest of the app's tabs. There's going to be a new animation for the on-screen keyboard where the keys slide up from the bottom of the iPhone's interface. There's going to be a redo and undo control when customizing the home screen, which is convenient for users who frequently move around app icons and widgets. So before, you had to shake to undo a move. There's going to be now a dedicated back and forward button, like to be able to redo or undo a move you make on the home screen. And he says Apple is also making some design changes across the upcoming macOS 27, looking to address controversial decisions around shadows and transparencies last year. In some cases, those visual quirks make text hard to read when using the software. So I think more people liked Liquid Glass on the iPhone than on the Mac. I saw so many complaints about macOS Tahoe with Liquid Glass, compared to iOS. So it looks like Apple is going to kind of revert some of those and make it a little bit easier to read, in macOS 27, which I think will be nice. Okay, so let's talk about the loophole that Apple just patched, which has existed for quite some time now. And I know a lot of people who have abused this. And that is the fact that before now, you used to be able to use the educational discounts without verifying that you're actually a student to get up to 10% off of Apple products. But now Apple has cracked down on that, and they are now requiring you to verify that you're actually a student. So you need to, go to the Unidays platform to get the education store discount. You have to basically confirm that you're a student or an educator. And at the same time they implemented this change, they also added the Apple Watch Series 11, the Ultra 3, and the Apple Watch SE to the education store with that up to 10% off discount. And Apple actually tried this whole Unidays verification back in 2022, but they pulled it very quickly because there were a lot of complaints. So yeah, if you were somebody who used to just get these student discounts, even if you weren't a student, the jig is up. You will now have to verify it, to prove that you're actually a student. Okay, so we have to talk about this because Google just this week announced a new GoogleBook. Yes, they just announced a brand new laptop called the GoogleBook, and this is an AI laptop built around Google Gemini. And this is interesting because this new laptop line runs a hybrid of Android and Chrome OS. And instead of a cursor, you get a magic pointer, which you wiggle it to activate Gemini, and you can point it at things to get contextual answers. Like if you point it at a date in an email, Gemini will set up a meeting, and you can also select 2 images and it visualizes them together. It's actually pretty neat. So Acer, Asus, Dell, HP, and Lenovo are all making GoogleBooks, and each one's going to have a glow bar on the lid, which I actually really like. I think this is really cool. So these are going to launch in the fall. There's no pricing just yet, but Google is using premium language, so don't expect it to be cheap like a MacBook Neo, but this is potentially going to be competition for maybe the MacBook Air, which I don't think any of you guys are going to be buying it, but it is still pretty interesting to see Google doing something like this. I think it actually has a chance to be somewhat successful, even up against the MacBook Air. Now, if you're somebody who is a collector, specifically an Apple collector, you just like collecting Apple products and just memorabilia and things like that, this week there was something interesting that went up for sale. There was a $1 Steve Jobs coin that went up as part of the American Innovation series. So the design shows a young Steve Jobs in a turtleneck, his classic outfit there, sitting in front of the Northern California landscape. So you could buy a roll of 25 for $61 or a bag of 100 for $154. Okay, so let's talk about the Apple Vision Pro. And before you stop watching, just know that this has nothing to do with the existing Apple Vision Pro. We're going to talk about the future of the Vision products because it's been really interesting. There's been a lot of debate online of whether Apple is actually ever going to release another Vision Pro headset, or if they're just going to put all their energy and all the resources into the glasses just to completely discontinue the Apple Vision Pro line. And we actually just got a fresh report from Mark Gurman this week, and he says that a new Vision Pro is not going to arrive for at least 2 years at a minimum. And he says that Apple has not abandoned the project, but the long rumored cheaper Vision Air was canceled last year, which we talked about. and most of the Vision's product group has been reassigned to the smart glasses division, Siri, AirPods with cameras, and the new AI pinion. They're all working on those instead of the Vision Pro. And he said this, many of Apple's top executives have written off the current Vision Pro as a product given its price and weight. John Turnus, the new CEO, was not a proponent of it during development. They do, however, believe in glasses and that the Vision Pro is a stepping stone to that vision. So yeah, it looks like we still could be seeing another Vision Pro headset, but it might not be like the Vision Air, the cheaper, lighter Vision Air. It might just be another version of the Vision Pro. Obviously, it probably still will be lighter and everything like that, but it's looking like that is still potentially in the cards, but we're at least a couple years away from that because we know that next year Apple is releasing the glasses, so it could be, a couple years after that even, if it actually comes out at all. But what do you guys think? Do you think Apple should actually release another Vision Pro, or should they just put all their efforts into the glasses and just keep building those? Now, if you want to get some AirPods Pro 3 for free, you actually can, straight from Apple. So this actually was from Mark Gurman. He posted this over on X. Apple is planning a pretty big Apple Card sign-up incentive for as early as next week in retail stores. If you sign up for a new card, buy AirPods Pro 3, then you'll get $250 cash back. In other words, if you get an Apple Card, you get free AirPods. So as early as next week, if you go into the store, you could be seeing this promotion where you can get, basically free AirPods Pro 3 if you sign up for the Apple Card. Okay, so the hottest topics in Apple world right now are AI, like Apple Intelligence, and foldables. We're all anticipating the iPhone Ultra, the iPhone Fold, whatever it's going to be called. But do people in the real world actually care about that? So we just got a survey from CNET and YouGov. They surveyed 2,400 US smartphone owners, and they found that only 13% would upgrade for a foldable design and only 12% for AI features. Meanwhile, people care a lot more about price, 55%, battery life, 52%, and storage, 38%. And if you take a look, the camera and the display size also both beat AI and foldables as far as what people actually want. And this is interesting because I remember the surveys going from 2024 to 2025, AI was like really hyped. Like a lot of people were anticipating AI. They said they'd upgrade for AI, and there's been a sharp decline in, consumer, basically just what people think and what they want from a phone now in 2026, going into 2027. So it seems like the sentiment has died down dramatically in terms of if AI is going to be something that people actually buy a phone for, like if that's one of their main things they're buying the phone for. So, part of me thinks that the whole foldables, thing is such a low percentage because we just haven't seen Apple's yet. Usually, sentiment is really low. It's really like negative until Apple comes out with theirs, and it's, something completely different than what we've seen before. So obviously the design, the hardware is probably going to be the same, but there's going to be software and things like that that make Apple's foldable much different. And I think after that, and maybe even after the new AI features, these numbers might rise for the next year of surveys. But what do you guys think? Do you care more about the camera, the battery life, and things like that more than like a foldable design and more than, better AI features? Let me know your thoughts. Now, we also heard some news that Apple is going to be buying iPhone and Mac chips from Intel. Yeah, so this comes from the Wall Street Journal, and they're saying that Apple and Intel have struck a preliminary deal where Intel would manufacture some of Apple's chips. And the likely targets for this are going to be the lower end M series chips. So like in the iPad, the base model iPad, and the MacBook Neo, that's where we could be seeing these Intel produced chips. And according to this report, they're saying that the reason for this happening now is because Tim Cook just admitted that iPhone 17 was supply constrained because TSMC could not make enough A19 and A19 Pro chips. So also, AI server demand is completely eating TSMC's capacity at the moment. So Apple needs a backup foundry, and they need it fast for products that could be coming, as early as like this year or next year. Okay, so let's move on over to our iPhone here, because this week we did see the official final release of iOS 26.5 after going through several beta updates. You can see this is the build number for 26.5, and there's actually, more in this update than people expected. So of course, some of the big changes were like end-to-end encryption for RCS messaging, which basically means that you're not, nobody's going to be able to intercept the messages when it's being sent from one device to another device. It's encrypted. And also we got the new wallpapers. If I go here and go into my wallpapers, you can see this is the new Pride wallpaper. If I go to customize this, if you tap on the little, color wheel right there with the edit button in it, if you tap on that, you could choose to have custom colors here. So you can really customize this to the way you like, which I really like. I've not seen this before from Apple, so it's a brand new type of feature, and it's was kind of hidden. They didn't really talk about it too much, but you can see there, that is what that looks like. And of course you can have the pre-built ones over here as well. So a lot of people said this reminded them of the iPhone SE wallpaper, which I agree, but I have to say, I think this is one of the best Pride wallpapers Apple has ever done. I think it looks tremendous, and I love all the versatility and, you know, the different colors you get as well. It's not like just one set of colors, which is pretty cool. So that of course was another big feature in iOS 26.5, but the thing I wanted to talk about the most was the security patches, because if you take a look at the security updates here, there are more than 50 bug fixes in this update. So lots of things changing here. Now, thankfully, there's nothing that was being actively exploited, but you can see there are a ton of new fixes in here, you know, in terms of security. So that's always a massive reason to update your device. I said that in the video, you know, but I'll say it again, you need to update to 26.5 if you want your device to be as secure as possible. Now, we also need to talk about the ads in Apple Maps just one more time, because there seems to still somehow be some massive confusion with the ads in Apple Maps. I've seen so many people on social media saying, I don't want ads while I'm driving. I don't want to have an ad pop up while I'm trying to read my directions. That's not the case. The ads in Apple Maps are very simply when you're searching for something, it's going to show you relevant, you know, restaurants, coffee shops, things like that nearby when you search for something. There are not going to be ads ever while you're actually driving, like you see in Waze and things like that. Apple would never do something like that, in my opinion. So you can see that when you search for restaurants, it will show ad right there at the top, just like you see in Google Maps, like you see when you Google something in general, you know, or when you're on Safari and you search for something, you'll see a sponsored result at the top. That's basically what the ads are going to be in the Apple Maps application. I've also seen people say, well, I'm not seeing it yet. Why is that? Well, we're not actually going to see these ads until the summer. So 26.5 just implemented the change, and now Apple's going to, of course, be sourcing through and, you know, collecting payment from brands and things like that so that they can, or businesses, so they can actually put their ads in here, but we're not actually going to see it until the summer. But yeah, iOS 26.5 is a relatively small update. Of course, we have the ads, the new wallpaper, you know, some small changes like with reminders and things like that. But again, it's a 0.5 update. The 0.5 updates are never major updates. The major updates, once again, are always the 0.2 updates and the 0.4 updates. All the other updates around it are going to be relatively minor, and they're going to be filled with security patches, which is always why I say it's still a good reason is to keep your device as up to date as possible, even if you don't have all the flashy, sexy features like you get in the 0.2, the 0.0, 0.2, and 0.4 updates. Anyways, let's talk about what to expect next from Apple. So if we head into our calendar right here, you can see that next week is going to be the week of May 18th. Now, we could be seeing an iOS 26.6 beta, but I think at this point, all eyes are going to be on iOS 27 because we are less than a month away from seeing iOS 27 beta 1 get released. And of course, iOS 27 in general getting unveiled, which is going to be right here on Monday, June 8th. That is the first day of the Worldwide Developers Conference. Now, I've had a lot of people ask me, will you be going to the Worldwide Developers Conference in person? And no, I will not be going. I will be staying here. I actually didn't get invited anyways, but I will be staying here and I will be making the videos like I always do. I'll be streaming the event as well. I will be streaming WWDC 2026, and I will be showing all the new features in a long video after that does get released, just as I do as an annual tradition here on the channel. So that is when we can expect that. I don't think at this point you care at all about 26.6. I know I don't personally, you know, so we could be seeing a 26.5.1 before the 26.6 final release, which 26.6 is most likely going to get released in June, I would say. So maybe, you know, near the end of June is a possibility for that. But again, all eyes on iOS 27 at this point. And then finally, we have another crazy AirTag story. I know I've gone a few weeks without doing a crazy AirTag story. It's been kind of light, but we have like 3 of them to go through, and today is going to be one of them. We'll have more for the future episodes as well. But this time in New Jersey, around 3:30 a.m., thieves pulled up to a custom auto shop, they smashed through the front window, and within seconds, they stole a $300,000 Lamborghini Urus. And at first, it looked like the Lamborghini had completely vanished, but what they didn't know, what the thieves didn't know, is that Mo, the owner of the shop, had secretly hidden an AirTag inside of the SUV. So he pulled up the Find My application, of course, as one does, and he called the police, where they also began tracking the Lamborghini through the Find My network as it moved across North Jersey. But then things escalated escalated fast because a Paramus police officer finally spotted the dark purple Lamborghini flying down Route 17 with a California plate and attempted a traffic stop. But the driver refused to pull over, and instead, police say the suspects took off, leading officers on a chase through several different towns. Meanwhile, the stolen Lamborghini was literally falling apart during the pursuit, and the thieves had apparently been driving it for miles on a completely blown front tire, destroying the wheel and causing about $15,000 in damage. But eventually, the driver exited the Garden State Parkway in Hillside, where the Lamborghini suddenly came to a stop. And the second it did, multiple suspects jumped out and ran in different directions on foot while police flooded the area. And the neighbors around there said they'd never seen that many cops in their neighborhood before. But anyways, police managed to catch one suspect, a 21-year-old man from Newark, who was later charged with receiving stolen property and resisting arrest. And somehow, despite all the damage and all that chaos, Mo still got his Lamborghini back. And he later said it was actually the second time that somebody tried stealing from his shop, and now he plans on replacing the front windows with bricks. But once again, without that AirTag hidden inside of the car, it may have taken police a lot longer to find that Urus. And like I always say, put an AirTag in anything valuable in your car is definitely something valuable. So don't forget to put one in your car. I think it's a very overlooked place to put an AirTag, but it's always worth it to do so because you just never know at this point. But anyways, guys, that is it for this week's episode of Apple Weekly. I cannot wait for the Worldwide Developers Conference. It's going to be kind of quiet until then as far as iOS updates and things like that. As you guys know, I've not really been posting a lot about the betas because there's really not a lot going on, and I'm kind of just anticipating iOS 27 at this point, which I'm sure a lot of you guys are as well. But anyways, thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed it, let me know with a comment down below, and I will see you very soon.